Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. In any world, right from the ancient times, diplomats have always been there. The ambassadors, diplomats, ministers, plenipotentiaries, special envoys, and they are sent to the other country to promote relationships, to promote trade, to promote better understanding, and of course, also to spy, honestly. The spying is never mentioned. That's the politically correct attitude. But the purpose is that anything of interest to the mother country is sent by the diplomats in special pouches which are not subject to the censor by the host country. They also have a lot of interaction with the civil society, and rightly so, because they have to build the inroads. It was very rightly summed up by one diplomat, that the diplomat is he who lies abroad for the good of the country. But what happens when these appointments are made specifically with one agenda? And that agenda is to report and also to impact and influence the host country's policies, indirectly and directly interfering in the internal affairs of the host country. Human rights is a very live issue, but it can mean one thing to the citizen and quite another thing to the government and to the state. And a state itself usually tweaks its ideological preference to accord with some who hold the reins. So, then this is that concept of deep state, not known to be enthusiastic of the human rights at all, yes. And the human rights are violated the world over. Sometimes for the reasons that are at least explainable, sometimes for the reasons that are not explainable, but they are violated. So the ideal condition for the citizen is to keep the rule away from the reach of the deep state in a tall order. If you look at the history of the global countries all over the world, from Kennedy to Trump to Nehru to Modi, from Jinnah to, shall I say, Ayub to Zia, and now to Imran Bajwa team. It represents an ideological somersault in our quest for rights. But what is happening is, and it's quite a shock when I learned yesterday, that President Biden has decided to interfere in the internal affairs of India and Pakistan. Who gave him that right? He has tapped two persons as US ambassadors, one for India and another for Pakistan, and both have been indicated that the human rights would be their major concern in the bilateral ties. The first one is a Los Angeles mayor, Eric Garcetti, who has worked with the Human Rights Watch in California and is now the ambassador designate to New Delhi. And he's before the Senate Screening Committee. He would also need endorsement from the full Senate. There's another person, a veteran diplomat, Donald Armin Blum. He has recently worked in volatile Tunisia. He has worked in Libya. And now he would be heading to Islamabad in Pakistan. Garcetti, the LA mayor, has promised to engage directly with the human rights activists as a part of his agenda. Actively, that means he is going to interact with them openly without regard to the sensibilities of the host country. It would be well that the India refuses, and so does Pakistan, to accord permission to these people to be the ambassadors, because the normal thing is that the names are sent to the host country for approval. And nobody can be appointed an ambassador without the approval of the host country. And there have been instances when the host country said, no, we don't want this person. Now, Bloom hopes that Pakistan will target all types of terrorism equally, stressing to interdict chronic vigilant violence against Pakistan's minorities. Truthfully, for countries like USA, there's a mismatch between the practice of human rights at home and the pursuits abroad. This is a typical example of the pot calling the kettle black. Look at the role of USA in human rights. Edward Snowden showed the world how his country violated guaranteed freedom even at home. Julian Assange, on the other hand, furnished details of how the USA trampled on human rights abroad, all over the world, whether it was Libya, whether it was Iraq, whether it is in Pakistan, whether it is even Iran. But it has never bothered about the human rights abroad. They are behaving typically like the colonial powers of the old times, whether it was French or Portuguese or British. They consider the other countries to be subhuman. And Julian Assange revealed that. One whistleblower lives in self-exile in Moscow. I'm referring to Edward Snowden. The other is in a prison in London awaiting possible extradition to USA and likely to die in jail itself, spend the whole life there. So this is the record of the human rights in USA, and they want to lecture India and Pakistan about the human rights. What message does they send out to the besieged whistleblowers and journalists, whether it's India or Pakistan? Human rights, as we know them, in practice are a seasonal virtue, and they fluctuate with the needs of the moral pulpit from where they are monitored and administered. Strategic and the business compulsions always spur human rights to be pursued, either with gusto or abandoned unceremoniously and buried fathoms deep, unwept, unhonored, unsung. For countries like USA, there is a mismatch. And if I look at the history of USA, from George Bush Sr. via Bill Clinton to Trump and now to Joe Biden, a range of expedient decisions come to mind that reveal the state's lip service to the human rights. Take the Tiananmen Square tragedy of June 1989. Hundreds and thousands of the people were killed. Tanks were brought to a peaceful demonstration. Did Bush impose sanctions on China as most Americans are hoping? No. After a couple of months, after the Tiananmen horrible massacre, USA gave China the status of most favored nation. It killed Allende in Chile and promoted a dictatorship. It destroyed the democracy in Philippines and supported Marcos, the most villainous one, Parks in South Korea, Pol Pot in Cambodia. All of them horrible records of the human rights, and USA was supporting them. I refer to George Bush Sr. Think of Clinton. The Democratic president led China by hand into WTO, convinced it was the right thing for the country. Trump himself, whom I personally prefer to other presidents, he stuck up adversarial agenda after failing to soften President Xi of North Korea. And when we talk of the present president. Hong Kong, Taiwan, sea lanes have resurfaced as issues. But is he sending a hostile person as his ambassador to China? No. Trump promised India submarine hunting helicopters while visiting Delhi. And this deal was a factor in the fateful China's-India's border skirmish in June 15. Trump frowned on subtleties. He was an honest man. He was plain honest. And he clearly said, for me, the economic benefit in the balance is a measure of the friendly rules attitude. He did not bother when Khashoggi was murdered because he could not afford to lose $100 billion armed contract with Saudi Arabia. So he said, okay, that's up to them. It's their internal affair. Now there is a treasure trove of competing hypocrisies shadowing the major advocates of the human rights. Look at France, what they have done in Cambodia, what they have done in Africa. And then they can preach human rights. President Biden said he is doing everything. Yet, if he was doing everything, why is popularity flounder? In the slippery situation, he cannot but look over the soldiers, and he is looking for the next year he might lose his party, the support both in the House and in the Senate. So coming back to this duo, ambassadors, Galetti and Blum, they scarcely bring hope to South Asia. Even if Pakistan and India as allies have horrible human rights issue, they forget two things. In India at least, press is so vocal that anyone having an issue, they like to promote, especially when the press, the main media is anti-government. And then there's the judiciary. Have you seen Supreme Court of the USA ever taking suo motu action in a rape case or a murder case? There have been people who have been shot at, 18 people killed, 20 people killed, random shooting. And the Supreme Court doesn't bat an eyelid. Here, 4 farmers were killed, mowed down by a speeding vehicle, absolutely condemnable. But the Supreme Court ordered action, appointed SIT, and that's not the only case. There was another case, Hathras rape case. One girl was raped and killed. And if Supreme Court can come at that time, how does one say that the human rights are being violated? Now, Blum could consider finding time from Afghanistan and other turbulence in the region, which is the main thing. But he confronted the reality that media in Pakistan is under siege. Now, Garrity says that he is going to engage with India and Kashmiri human rights workers. He also wants to talk to Amnesty International, who were forced to terminate operations in India because they were indulging in money laundering. So what Garrity is going to do in India is, according to the information that has reached me, he is going to talk to the journalists, he'll attend and listen to those people who are anti-government on the raging issues, and he's also going to interfere about the Pegasus, as if Pegasus is the only thing that has happened in India only. It hasn't happened in more than 100 countries. And as if USA is lily white as far as personal freedom is concerned. He wants to talk to minorities in distress, especially with the Christians and Muslims, who appointed him as a custodian of the minorities. We have a minority commission in India. And if you look at the opportunities vis-a-vis the population percentage, they have a pretty high percentage in the education. They have two universities, major universities. They have a Muslim fundamentalist university, Deoband, Jamia, Aligarh Muslim University. Christian education centers are aplenty and non-Christians are crazy to go in there. He's also going to study how the Indian constitution, which granted human rights, is being destroyed by Modi government. Is he Supreme Court of India? Or is he going to be viceroy of the imperial President Joe Biden in India? And India is a vassal state or a colony of USA. And they forget that this Senate hearing clearance, when I talked to the people in Washington yesterday, they told me there's going to take about 6 to 7 months before these people are cleared by the Senate. Hopefully by that time, the midterm elections would be there and the Senate would no longer be in the hands of the Democrats, and such players would not be tolerated. I remember there was an American ambassador, Blackwell, in Pakistan, who was responsible, and he died with President Zia in his attempt. So, keeping hope is not the same thing as finding a double solution to prevent some uncertainties. Prime Minister Modi was denied a US visa as Chief Minister. But then, the same country accorded him fellowship and considered him a bulwark against China. Can anybody forget that Robert Blackwell, President Bush's envoy in New Delhi, refused to visit Pakistan, Gujarat at time when the supposed Godhra incident took place, because it was not politically expedient. So if Blackwell did not visit Gujarat, how is it expedient for Garrity to interact with the people who are anti-government or anti-national? Kashmir is on the mend. Let's not forget it. And the delimitations have been done. There are likely to be elections and the statehood has to be restored. Is USA trying to fish in the troubled waters and create disturbance there, so that it can provide Pakistan, its proxy, an opportunity to intervene? I can only hope that this political expediency that is being exercised by Joe Biden comes to a halt. And I would, if I was to advise Prime Minister Modi today, I would very clearly say, tell my foreign minister and the foreign embassy that they should inform the State Department in USA that this person is persona non grata. We will not accept him as ambassador under any circumstance, because we have reasons to believe, looking at his antecedents and his open statements, that he is going to interact with those organizations and with those people who clearly do not have India's interest at heart. Nor does, for that matter, belong the interest of the Pakistan at heart. Both of them, as a matter of fact, need to be given a boot by the host countries. Would they do that? I don't know. But they should do it. As a matter of fact, today, the situation being as such, the countries, the host countries have to take a stringent action so that these neo-colonial powers who have absolutely horrible record of their own. And then, they still suffer from that old thought, white man's burden, that they are civilized, more capable, and they can be super cops. Who pointed them to this high position of trying to impact the internal policies of the different countries? That is absolutely not acceptable. And if the government of India fails to take preventive steps, it shall be a bad day for the sovereignty of the country. I remember Mrs. Gandhi, she visited White House invited. And then Nixon said, well, let her meet my chief of staff and other people. He immediately came out, sat in the car. The Secretary of State ran to her. Well, madam, she said, no, I'm not going to meet anybody. And she flew back. That is a sort of strong action we take and send a strong message to the White House that we will not be trifled with. Stop being the monarch of all your survey. Stop being a king emperor. Stop being a Saturn who can interfere in our internal affairs. We do not need you. Get lost. That message has to be sent by Modi to Biden, that these people, they will not be permitted to enter India because they have an ulterior purpose. Same should be done by Pakistan. These countries have to rise up and tell them, we are no longer your colonies. We refuse to accept this wanton, unwarranted interference in our internal affairs. We can decide our destinies by ourselves. And if India doesn't send it as the fourth largest, strongest, most powerful country in the world, it shall be misstepping, and that would be unfortunate. Thank you.